public hearing for the City of Tampa's Architectural Review Commission. Welcome, everyone. I'm Ted Kempton, Chair of the Commission. If you are here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your project should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, and wall sections. The staff will then present their report. We will then ask for public comment. Please state and spell your name clearly if you're here to speak for or against a project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take some time now to summarize your comments because 3 minutes goes by very quickly. Following public comment, the commissioners will ask questions in the same order as the presentation. Next, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. After the public hearing is closed, no further testimony can be given. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based on the following: Chapter 27 of the City Code of Ordinances, the design guidelines, Secretary of Interior standards, Historic Preservation Development Review Committee comments, and the testimony given at the public hearing. The ARC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence cell phones. And I'll start on my left with the introduction of commissioners.
Eleanor Paris Ketchum, Attorney Representative.
Good evening, I'm Carol Post. I'm the Public Policy Representative. Thank you.
Dan Myers, I'm an architect.
And John Prokop, I practice architecture.
And we also have Ron Vila with staff, Alexis Guzman with staff, and Dana Crosby Collier, our attorney.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Ron Vila. I'm a planner for historic preservation. We can move down the agenda to legal.
Good evening, Dana Crosby Collier from the City Attorney's Office. Regarding the conflict of interest, does any member have a conflict of interest with any item on the agenda this evening?
I do not.
Thank you. And has any member had an ex parte communication regarding any item on the agenda this evening?
I have not.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So moving forward, we have no continuations reflected on the agenda. We'll move to the swear-in. Everybody that wishes to testify, including staff, please stand up and raise your right hand. Ms. Guzman will swear us in.
You guys want to stand, please? You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be providing today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to our first agenda item, which is ARC-25-0000050. This is for the address of 407 South Delaware Avenue. This is in the Hyde Park Historic District. Currently, it's a vacant parcel. The underlying zoning is RM24. The request coming forward is for single family. So the owner and the agent has the ability to have a little more density. They chose to go with a single family. Just want to point that out to you guys. The request, there's a variance attached to this. There's a north side yard setback variance from 7 foot to 2 foot with an encroachment for 6 inches for eaves and gutters. And if that goes forward, the agent has been advised to discuss the variance first. Y'all will deliberate and have a motion on the variance. If the motion goes forward for the approval of the variance, then we could go into the certificate of appropriateness. The certificate of appropriateness is for new construction for a primary structure and a detached accessory structure with site improvements. As they go through the variance information, in your packet, you have the responses to the hardship criteria. You could follow along. He's going to put this into the record, but it's in your packet. And at this time, I'd like to share some photos with you so you get familiar with the property. As always, I start with a Sanborn map to give you some historic reference. The red line indicates the local district. I have this perforated line here. There was an expansion to the Hyde Park Historic District in January 2023, and this is the expansion area. The request in front of you tonight is in the expansion area. This is highlighted in this green area. So in 2021, anything that is built or discussed must come forward and meet the criteria and the standards within the Hyde Park Design Guidelines. Once again, this is our vicinity map. I just wanted to include this too to show you a point of reference where it's located within the overall district. It is in the expansion area, but it falls within the local district of Hyde Park as it is currently today. This is an aerial. Wanted to show that it is on Delaware. There is a structure that sits to the south that was part of the overall parcel. This was a vacant parcel that will be apparent as we go through the photos. There is an alley that runs to north and south behind the subject site, and speckled within the district, you have some single family and you have some multifamily structures. This is looking directly at the site. It was subdivided. This was one platted lot. The structure that I'll show you here is subdivided, so this is a buildable lot. They went through the process and they received that, the go-ahead through zoning. There is a perimeter wall that's there. Wanted to show you a little bit of the wall. So from the street, you have granite curbing, you have the parkway, you have the linear sidewalk, and then you have this knee wall that encompasses the site. As part of the original site before it was separated is this structure here that has a front-loading vehicular access and does have a porte cochere. I wanted to point that out because the variance that you're going to see today is a porte cochere that is a character-defining feature that encroaches into today's setbacks. On the other side of the subject site is the multifamily that I believe that's sensitively included in the district. Just looking down the street, this is looking to the north. You have the granite curbing, you have some parallel parking, and you have some curb cuts. Turning in the other direction, looking back into the district to the south. Once again, you have the same fabric. You have the granite curbing, the parkways, the sidewalk, parallel parking on the street. This is the condition of the alley as it sits today. Here and here. And the last photo that I'm going to show is the structure across the street. Before this was a district, parking requirements were not met to preservation standards. So you see how the width of the curb cut was here, and they park in the front of the structure, which is negative to the direction that we provide them. So now that it's a district, they have to comply with our standards as how the vehicle sits on the site. That concludes the photo presentation, and we'll have the owner and the agent address the board. At this time, you're going to focus on the variance only.
Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Karim Tahiri. I'm the agent. The owner is actually my son. And I want to start with the variance, and I'm going to read it. So, and probably should put the site plan at the same time. So you have a little bit of a. This is the site as it sits today. This is the proposed building, the porte cochere, and the detached structure in the back. I have some dimensions here that gives you an idea of where we're actually locating the porte cochere from the front, and the variance we're looking for is the from 7 to 24 inches, plus 6 inches for gutters. I'm going to read the 6 points variance. The alleged hardship or practical difficulties, and singular with respect to the property or with respect to a structure or building thereon, and those suffered in common with other property structures or buildings similarly located. So the response is due to the distinctive characteristic and regulatory constraints, the hardship is tied to the need to preserve the historic fabric of the neighborhood. The hardship or practical difficulty does not result from the action of the applicant. The self-created hardship or practical difficulty shall not justify a variance. The response, in order to maintain coherence with the rest of the district, the location of the porte cochere is crucial to maintain the historic fabric characteristic of the neighborhood. Number 3, the variance, if granted, will not substantially interfere or injure the health, safety, or welfare of others whose property will be affected by allowing the variance? The answer is the proposed project will not encroach upon public walkways, roads, or other areas typically accessed by pedestrians or vehicle, ensuring that no adverse impact on public health or safety will be resulting. Number 4, the variance is in harmony and serves the general intent and purpose of this chapter and the adopted Tampa Comprehensive Plan. So reducing the setback will allow for the preservation of this historically significant feature, ensuring that the property continues to contribute to the district character while providing necessary accommodation for more modern use. And number 5, allowing the variance will result in substantial justice being done, considering both public benefits intended to be secured by the chapter and the individual hardship or practical difficulties that will be suffered due to a failure of the board to grant a variance. Again, the porte cochere as an integral part of this design and its preservation will ensure the aesthetic of the historic values and in the area is maintained for future generations. And finally, number 6, if granted, will allow development of consistent with design standard and compatible with the historic pattern development with the historic district, historic conservation overlay district, multiple property designation, and the locally designated landmark or landmark site in which the subject property is located. The structure historic placement, particularly the porte cochere, is a key feature of its architectural character and the character of the district as a whole. Placing the porte cochere elsewhere will conflict with the fabric of the neighborhood. And I kind of added a little sentence today saying that its proposed location is respectful to the rest of the front by pushing it back. It's respectful to the front, of the street, also and also respectful to all the structure along that street, and reduces the presence of this building by breaking the scale down. So this, and with this, I would like to show you just a couple examples in the district of actually beautiful homes that have a feature similar. This actually architecturally is very similar, but again, you see here the front porch is forward, the porte cochere is reduced and set back to kind of give the front of the house more importance and kind of reducing its front appearance. Also, it allows, by pushing it back, to park the vehicle further back, allowing maybe even some room in the front. So if people were to stack 2 cars, they would have a little bit more room than if it was forward. This is another home. These are larger homes. And again, the porte cochere is set back. This one is right off the front porch, but it's still set back significantly. Here's another one. These are just examples in the district. And this is a close-up of that same. I don't know if you want me to show you what it looks like on the elevation at this point, or do you would like to? So this will be front and rear elevation. You see, so the front of the house here being set back, the front porch is actually lined up with the older porches and homes on that same street. It's about 18 feet. And the porte cochere is pushed well beyond it to, again, reduce its importance. So you see here the front porch, the porte cochere with access to the house at that level, which actually is functional. And it just shows it on this one elevation. This kind of concludes my variance purpose.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ron Vila, I'm staff for Historic Preservation. With a variance, we're usually silent, but I wanted to put into the record that when the City of Tampa looks at variance requests, if you go to the Variance Review Board, there's 5 criteria questions. Years ago, for the sensitivity within the district, we added the 6 criteria here for the importance and the sensitivity within the district. So allowance should be met moving forward with the district if the examples that he shows meet your criteria. With all the examples that he showed, the porte cocheres are within the 7-foot setback. So they're closer to 7 foot than what today's code calls for. So it's closer, and the examples he showed are consistent with what he's showing.
Great, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the public that's here to speak for or against?
Good evening. My name is Don Roberts. I live in the home 2 doors to the south of the structure that's being proposed. My wife and I both are pretty excited about the updates that are going on in this block right now. We've lived there for about 17 years, and there's been 2 empty lots and 2 significantly dilapidated homes on the block. One of those houses, the one across the street from this location, has been renovated recently, and it's been quite a nice renovation. Somebody's living in there now, looks great. This location is the double size. It had on the south a rather dilapidated home, the one next to mine. It has been also purchased, and it's a person who's renovating that and planning to live in it, and then I'm sure it's going to look great, certainly better than it does now. And then we have this empty lot that this particular proposal was about. We're supportive of these changes and look forward to the general improvements going to happen to the block. But we do have a couple of concerns about this particular thing. One that's not really germane to this conversation has been that split. As you all know, that requires a 50-foot facing on each of the streets. That split is right in the middle of that lot. It puts 50 feet on each of them. Unfortunately, the survey is not drawn correctly. So the porte cochere of the next door, the one that's existing, it shows it as being about 4 feet to the south of the line, when in actuality, if you look at your pictures, you'll see it's right on the line. And then the eaves of that porte cochere are actually extending into the empty lot to the north. And so while that's not really germane to this conversation, it does show that the building that's being proposed is much closer to the porte cochere of the other side than the drawing seems to suggest. Secondly, the massing of this structure, the Mediterranean style, it matches the non-contributing apartment complex to the north. But it doesn't match any of, I like this style, by the way, the Mediterranean style. We've seen it, the pictures that the gentleman showed, they're all beautiful homes, and I like them. But it doesn't really match any of the ones that are also on this block. It seems to be built to maximize the amount of space, the home space that's in there. At 4,700 square feet, this house would be 80% larger than the next size home on that block. So it's filling up that space as much as possible. Again, I like this particular style. I understand that somebody might want to put as much space in there as they want, but I don't think we should allow the building to obtain a variance to these setbacks in order to further maximize the size of this space. The hardship request suggests that the variance is necessary to maintain the integrity. For that particular style of home, I guess it is, but it's the size that creates the problem. So we've all seen neighborhoods where each of the homes is meant to fill the space as much as possible and be as tall and as wide. That may work in other neighborhoods, but I don't think it's the right style for this particular place. So while I love the house and all this stuff, I just think it's too large to fit in that space, and I respectfully ask that you not grant these variances on either the house or the space in the back.
Great, thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the public here to speak for or against? Okay, not seeing any. We're going to move on to the question portion from commissioners, and I'll start on my right.
Could you put the site plan back up, please? The need for a porte cochere, I understand, in this house, in this district. And I think it's a good thing to be adding to a house. The reason the porte cochere needs to be pushed over is because the house is too wide. If the house was narrower, there would be no need to put the porte cochere back, correct?
Yeah, can I make a correction on what the gentleman just said?
Sure.
The house is 3,200 square feet. 4,700 square feet is the overall coverage of the site, including if you look at there's if you look at the house area, is 1842 on the first floor. So it's about 3,300 square feet. Just as a correction, it's not 4,700 square.
Okay. But my question is basically, the only reason there's a hardship to put a porte cochere on that side of the house, and I'm not sure, I don't see a north arrow on here to be able to determine which side, but to that side of the house, the reason there's a need to push it over the setback is because you've made the house that wide.
Yeah, the house is about 35 feet wide.
If the house wasn't that wide in the design, the porte cochere wouldn't be pushed past the setback. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I've never seen them really at the setback 7 foot. Typically, they're almost on the line or a couple of feet.
Well, they were
ins-
built in the 20s before there was a historic district and before, the setbacks may have been different back then. We can't use that as a precedent.
What we use it
The
as
current codes, the current setbacks say these are what the setbacks are for your lot. So to ask for a variance or a hardship because you want to push it past the line because you want this wide of a house, that is the definition of a self-made hardship. If there is nothing to do with this lot, or you tell me, is there something else with this lot, since this is a question and answer period, is there something else to do with this lot that makes it impossible to build a narrower house?
well, the lot is actually 43 feet, not 50. I mean, 53 feet on the front, and that's from the survey. So somebody said 50. It's all wider than 50. But-
Well, that still doesn't answer the question. The question is there something else about the lot that prevents you from building a narrower house so that the porte cochere does not have to encroach upon the setback?
Well, we have a 7 foot setback, and then we have. I mean, we could have done without the porte cochere, but I think porte cochere makes the building and makes it work in the.
Totally agree, but the house doesn't have to be that wide. You've made the house that wide, so you've self-imposed your own limitations on how much room you have for the porte cochere. So is it possible to make this house narrower and move the porte cochere over so that you're not encroaching upon the setback? It's crucial that there has to be a hardship. You can't make your own hardship and then say, I have this hardship that I have to resolve. The hardship is got to have something to do with the lot or the property. Usually a major tree or some other problem with the lot or too narrow a lot or something like that. But to me, I don't see a hardship that causes you to have to do that besides the width of the house that you've designed to put on the lot.
Well, one of the things that you can't do on this lot is put a garage attached to the house. So by having to have, a driveway and a detached structure, we have to allow for access to the back.
Agreed.
So that takes, even if I didn't have the porte cochere, I need at least 12 feet here to create that space for the cars.
To drive through, sure.
Yes. And that's kind of a typical setup where the detached structure is always kind of in the back,
Yep.
lined up with the porte cochere.
Yep.
So that's another, I don't know how you call it, but it's kind of another.
I think we're just going back and forth. What's the reason this house has to be this wide?
Well, I have to work with a program, and I try to make it as narrow as possible because I was aware, and we kept this the porte cochere at 12 foot. It's very narrow for today's cars. I mean, when you think of a car today, we're not, compared to carriages, we have to make it,
Has the building started to encroach, has the house started to encroach upon the rear setback? Or do you still have room to extend the house to the rear and change the proportion of the house from this kind of a rectangle to a narrower, longer rectangle? Is that possible?
not really, because I'm left with a very narrow spot here.
That's still, I'm saying, but that's your desire. Is there a hardship built into the lot that would prevent you from doing that?
I do have trees that would, if I start coming closer, I would start encroaching on those, but
Okay, I have no further questions.
Sir, the variance, if granted, will allow development that is consistent with the design standards and compatible with the historic pattern of development. So you're saying that you really need this porte cochere, but it's very nice, and it's very nice because it repeats a pattern that is fairly consistent within the district.
Yes.
But it seems to be quite, it doesn't need to be quite as wide. And it seems like there's a certain amount of, but you're not going to get 7 feet. You're not going to get a side yard
Yeah.
out of this thing anyway.
I would never get 7 feet. If anything, we would lose the porte cochere
Right.
altogether. To me, the porte cochere does help enhance the whole structure because it was always part of the architect. You know, these homes had porte cocheres and had detached structures. If I start pulling, I could do the porch narrower in the front, but we decided to do it deeper because that's the pattern that exists in the neighborhood. You know, or we could even do without a porch, like the home next door on the north. And yeah, and then I would gain some space, and but we decided to go a little bit more with the aesthetic of the neighborhood and the fabric of what's existing, versus just, you know.
And the owner of the adjacent two-story structure, have you spoken to him about having this encroachment?
No.
No? Okay. I feel as though the porte cochere historically was somewhat narrower, and I know that's difficult, but, and you've not really shown us what's going on underneath the porte cochere, but is there a stairway in that?
It's inset.
Okay,
inside the dome.
you've already done the best thing
Yeah.
that you could do, is to
I have
inset the
plans. I
stairway.
wasn't aware that I had to bring them in, but I do have floor plans before we. Right now, the clearance for the porte cochere is only 9 feet. I could probably lose, because again, I want to keep enough mass on this side to make it meet the ground the right way. I like to have a small return on this side, but this is only 9 feet across. So for today's cars, you know, you going in and backing up, I was trying to make it so it's also functional. Not, you know, and again, I could probably lose a foot, but I would never get to 7 foot setback.
Right.
We could probably make it 3 foot setback, but, you know, that would be the tightest. I mean, to make it functional.
So the lot is 53 feet wide.
53.
53?
53,
Yes. And the house is 35.
yes.
So that leaves you 18 feet, right?
Did you take the 7 foot setback?
Yes, so you've got 18 feet, and then you have a 7-foot setback. So you've only got 11 feet on the other side of the house.
Yeah, that's about what I have left.
So you're saying that there's a 12-foot, your math isn't adding up. So you've got a 12-foot, you've got 11 feet on the north side of the house, and you've got a 12-foot porte cochere, and you're saying that you've got a 2-foot.
Actually here, well, wait, what I have here is 14, because you have 12 plus 2. And 7 on this side. I think if I recall, the house is 35. So 35, 42 and 14. 42 and 14. 50, yeah, 53.
So it's not really 35, is what
No, it is, I think it is 35.
you think it is. That's not adding up, because we've got 53. You've got 7 on, so 53, it's 35. 53 minus 35 is 18. And then you're taking 7 feet for the south side, and that only leaves you 11 feet on the north side. And that's not going to get you somebody out there, I see pen and paper.
Yeah. Ryan, do you have the plan I sent you?
Okay, so it has to be, so,
11, I get 11 on the north side.
11?
so it would have to go down to 34. Thank you very much.
It has to be 11, you're right, I did the same thing.
So by my second grade math, if the lot is 53 foot wide, he's got 7 on the south side. You take away 7 from 53, you're left with 46. The house is 35 foot wide, that leaves 11. So he's got 11 from the body of the building to the property line on the north side.
So literally, I probably have,
Yeah, but what's thrown off by that is if you do have 11, you still are gonna have 2 feet.
yes,
So then that means you have 9, and you're saying the opening is 9 plus 2 feet for the column.
Yeah.
So now we have another 2-foot deficit there.
If I could assist on this, he's saying that the porte cochere is 9 foot wide, and then he has 2 foot clear to the property line, so that's the 11.
No, I believe what he's saying is the opening of the porte cochere is 9 foot wide. Then he has an architectural
Column.
detail on the south and to the north. The north
You have
is
the
2
dimension,
feet.
you have the dimension there.
I didn't bring the plans. I can
So I
see.
don't think the dimensions are lining up.
I got you.
So put the elevation up again, please. All right, so looking at the east elevation, you have 2 feet, you're not showing a property line, but you have 2 feet for the
Yeah.
property line, then you have 2 feet for your column, correct?
Yes,
Then you have a 9-foot opening, and then what is that dimension before you get to the house?
this one, that's like a 8-inch.
8-inch, all right.
It's block.
All right, so then that's 11, 13. I just made it 9 inches for easy math, so you got 13 3/4. Then you got 7 on the south side, so
That's
you're now at
20.
20 3/4.
So the house is 33. And I said 35, I don't have the plans with me, it's just from what I recall.
Okay.
And I do have the plans, I can send them to you.
32 1/4 for the house.
If we, if we grant the variance, you will be limited to a 2-foot, a 2-foot side yard with a 6-inch encroachment. So whatever is going on in other places on the lot, you're going to be stuck with that 2 feet.
And I can try to work out with that. If I have to lose a foot in the house, I would, in the width of the house. Because at the end of the day, I have to go through, permitting, and these are schematics, so I don't have construction documents yet. But we have to make it work if the house was 33 and I had to end up at 32, I would make it 32 to make it work. Again, I don't have the number in my head, I drew it, but I don't realize I had to bring the plans with me.
If the variance is approved, Ron Vila, with Historic Preservation, if the variance is approved, it's tied to the site plan that you are looking at today. So it talks about a side yard setback, but it's not the whole side, it's only pertaining to what's shown on the plans. If through discussion, if you alter it, the plans that he presents to us will have to show that reflection, whatever the numbers come out to, if it is to move forward.
And, excuse me, Ron, it's 2 feet, it's a 2-foot side yard with a 6-inch encroachment.
That's what he advertised.
Okay.
So if it comes further from the property line, he's advertised properly. It cannot go closer to the property line.
Right. Okay, we're still asking questions, we're not discussing, right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
I've asked all my questions, thank you.
Sorry. It's 31.6. I just found the plan on my phone. So the house width is 31 foot 6 inches. Again, I'm sorry, I don't know what 35 came from. I can put it on the,
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I have a question for staff, just to make sure I understand in terms of if the variance were to move forward. Is the variance applicable because of the built porte cochere, or is it applicable to the drive aisle? For
It's ju-
example.
It's just for the structure. Anything above 36 inches is
Okay.
considered a structure, so it's tied to the porte
Understood.
cochere.
So.
It's not the
If they were
driveway.
to drop, right, so they could still have the drive and it's
That's
only
the
the
correct statement.
structure?
Yes, that's a correct statement.
And, thank you, and if, what you just said, I just wanna understand if, so the, variance, because it runs with the land, would be applicable just at the point where the structure is, or would it run continuously?
As shown and discussed on the plans today, a lot of times people are saying if we approve that side yard variance, then it runs the whole side. That's not an accurate statement. It is reflected on the drawings today. So he's confined to whatever this discussion terminates at.
Okay, so it's not as if someone could come.
Correct, and add something
Years
else
later
in
and
here.
expand and
Yes.
continue to build up against that.
Yes, ma'am.
Buried line. Okay, thank you. So to the applicant, thank you. I wanted to just, reflect on your, explanations for the, variance criteria. I won't reiterate, but I would suggest I agree. I don't believe that the, item 2, in terms of, that the difficulty does not result from an action of the applicant. I'm struggling to also see how this is not self-imposed. But I wanted to just turn direction to the third item, which is that the variance if granted will not substantially interfere with or injure the health, safety, or welfare of others whose property would be affected. Your statement, I think, helpfully refers to the fact that this would not cause injury or encroachment to the public walkways, roads, or other typically accessed by pedestrians, et cetera. But what I think what concerns me here, if you could just comment on it, is that it does not pay any mind to the adjacent neighbor who would be, and forever would be impacted by having a structure run almost right up to their lot line. So to me, that does, we would then be taking an action that would imply some injury, perhaps property value might be reduced or in some way negatively impacting that adjacent neighbor.
So the structure on the north, and
I know there's a structure there now, but,
yeah, they're about 8 feet or 7.5 feet. They're on setback. Because they don't have a porte cochere, kind of like what I have on the south side. So they have their own setback. You're right. We'll be about 9 foot apart. But it's
for
not.
what's there now, but a future state, I don't know if they're built to their full extent either, but I think I just wanted to get your reaction as to the nature of the potential negative impact of this on that adjacent piece. It's not just about the sidewalk or public spaces, but it's the private spaces next to you.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say is it's not atypical. It's very common in the district that buildings are built like all detached structure. By code, can be 3 feet off the property line, a detached structure. So if my neighbor on the north side decided to build a detached structure, they can be 3 feet, so we'll be only 6 feet apart. Now there are fire codes that we have to do. We have to do special coatings on those walls for those reasons. But if they decided to build a detached or any kind of building in the back next to this building, we would be even closer. Right now we are about 9 foot 6.
Understood. It's just a perspective.
I'm just
that
saying it's very typical in the district to see that closeness between buildings.
I am familiar with it. Thank you. That's all I have.
Is this structure, the picture that's up now, that's a multifamily structure?
Next door?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
And so those windows that we see on the side, do you know, maybe you don't know, but do you know those go into their living spaces, or are they, do you have any idea what the format of the interior of that building looks like?
No.
Okay.
No,
Do you know how many units are in there?
I'm not sure, maybe 4, maybe?
Okay.
I'm not sure.
4? Okay.
It's 24 units per acre is the zoning, but I'm not sure how many they have.
Okay, no other questions.
Could you put the elevation back up, please? And then my question is, I understand your testimony that the porte-cochere is an element that is common in the neighborhood and fits. Knowing that you were gonna ask for a variance, did you at all explore any other architectural feature that could be done to provide cover for that doorway without requiring a variance? That would be in keeping with the style?
I'm not sure what else I would look for to, I mean, for,
An eyebrow, something like that, something other than a porte-cochere?
no, because that's what I would put to protect the car and, you know, I guess the owners when they come in and walk into, you know, the home. So it's just a protected area for car and people. So, I mean, but are you thinking maybe canvas or like a different?
I'm just asking
No,
because you obviously
My-
are asking
mine's-
for a variance, so.
My instinct was to build something, you know, part of the building
Okay,
because of the historic pattern in the neighborhood.
gotcha. Again, I'm gonna go one step further with this. As you were, and I know you're familiar with the neighborhood, are you familiar with another potential design solution that could fit, that would not violate or require a variance?
No.
Okay. No further questions for me.
I have one other question.
Sure, go ahead.
On this side of is that a solid wall? I mean, I presume it's a solid wall. No, the other side, on the other side of the porte-cochere, is it a solid wall where you have the thick,
No, it's open.
it's open?
It's-
Okay,
It's literally 2 columns
okay,
attached to the building.
thank you.
Okay, that's it for the question period. You have 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes for rebuttal, if you so choose.
Like I said, this was kind of, for me, when we look at the building, the archetype is the only solution I saw. If I was to have a porte-cochere to be built the same way with the same finishes, and I was trying to go as narrow as possible, and I did find the plans. It is 31.6 for the building width. The actual square footage that I just saw was 3190, both stories. So the total building is 3,190 square feet. Again, I do not have a different solution for a porte-cochere. The only thing I could see is if we were to lose a porte-cochere, I would just put an eyebrow to protect the door, and that would be it. So we could do without the porte-cochere if that's really, what's going to trigger the refusal.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, at this point, we are going to close the public portion of the hearing, and we will move to discussion. Anyone? I'm not looking at anybody in particular.
I can start. I like the idea of bringing a new structure to a vacant lot and further developing. I think the design looks fine. I like it with the porte-cochere. All of the things look positive. It's just too much on this parcel. And I can't support the variance. I think variances need to be exceptionally compelling, particularly in the historic district. And I just don't think you've met the burden of proof on at least 3, if probably not 4 or 5 of the criteria, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, I just, you go through these checklists of what you have to answer as far as to create the hardship or to prove the hardship. And at number 2, the practical difficulty of putting the porte-cochere on this side of the building is by default the result of the actions of the petitioner in designing a house wider than can fit on this particular parcel. It's a self-created hardship, and variances, like you said, variances have to be very, very, very carefully examined in historic districts, because they start to create a snowball effect in the neighborhood. And, you know, the zoning setbacks are there for a reason. And the hardship has to be an actual hardship pertaining to the property, not pertaining to the house that this particular person wants to put on the property. So we're not even talking about the volume of the house or the, you know, the mass of the house compared to other houses in the neighborhood and all that kind of stuff, single-family houses. We're just simply talking about there's no reason you can't design a narrower main volume house in order to create. Yes, he has a program that he said he needs to quote unquote fill in the house, but that doesn't mean that program fits on this property either. You know, it's a self-fulfilling difficulty.
Again, there are a number of really good things about this project. It does indeed, while it fills up a large volume, we have enormous numbers of houses particularly in the Hyde Park district, that are filling up the permissible built area. But this is a new case, and I feel badly about opposing this variance because it does many good things for the neighborhood. It puts a new house, a single-family house in an area that's on a lot that is zoned for multifamily. But it is indeed a self-created hardship. And the other thing that it does, it does allow development. It presents us a development that is consistent and really helps maintain the historic fabric. But it just doesn't work, and we are constrained by the fact that we need to have that the hardship is just not there.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's certain criteria that we have to abide by, and I agree. I love the house. I would buy it. I think it's great. But, unfortunately, we have certain standards and requirements that we have to meet. And one of them is that it's not a self-created issue. And so, I'm not quite sure how we get around that, and the justification is it's not, that's in the paperwork, is it's not self-created because it complies with the rest of the neighborhood and the rest of and I'm not quite sure that really speaks to why it's not a self-created. So unfortunately, I'm not, I would find that we can't grant the variance either, and hopefully there's another solution to the issue.
Okay, so it sounds like we have a beginnings of a motion.
All right, I'll give it a shot. So I would move.
Sure. Well, you can still make your motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll make.
Yeah, just go ahead and make the motion and we'll wait.
All right, I'll make the motion that move that the variance request for case ARC 2500000050 for the property located at 407 South Delaware Avenue be denied due to the failure of the petitioner to meet the burden of proof with regard to the 6 hardship criteria as set forth in section 27114D of the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances. Specifically, at section 2, the petitioner has not established that the hardship does not result from the actions of the applicant.
All right, so we're looking for a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion on this? All right, not having any discussion, all in favor of the motion to disapprove signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
Commissioners, Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. I think at this point, we have two different avenues that we could proceed on. And speaking with the agent, he is willing to move forward with the removal of the portico share that was just denied. There is no other variances attached to it. The structure could move forward through the certificate of appropriateness, or it could be continued to the following month. He feels that the project was much better with the portico share, that it met the historic intent, but he's willing to move forward, and he can speak for himself. So it's the pleasure of the board. Can he continue with his presentation tonight for the certificate of appropriateness?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, for the rest of the building, we're planning on setting up the building about 29 feet from the front setback. The front porch is lined up with the other building in the neighborhood at 18.5 foot. Detached structure is set up at 3 and 3 with access from the front. I'm going to show you. So the way this building is put together, the wall assembly, it's going to be a block structure with the with the inset window. I brought a sample of a window that we were going to use, and it's been approved by the district. It's an aluminum clad window. It's about 5 inches wide, and it's going to sit in a 9 foot 7/8 wall. So the return on this wall, when the window is set up, would be about 4.5 inches. So we'll create that, kind of inset window with this type of windows. I'm showing here, I can go through the materials. We're going to do tongue and groove for the soffits and the ceiling on the porches. And we're going to do a barrel tile, clay tile on the roofs. I'm going to show you some examples just of material. This is just an example of the type of roof we're looking at. It's appropriate for the type of architecture. This is a building I built a few years ago. This is another type of. So we're just looking at the typical type of roofs. For the stucco, we're going to go with a smooth trowel stucco. This is a sample of a building in the neighborhood. Again, for the detached structure, we're looking to do a very simple garage door or carriage door. And for the hardware, for the composite brackets, I'm just showing an example. It's not exactly this, but this is an example of some of these brackets, the composite brackets. We picked a door, the front door, with some lights and some hardware. Again, the color we haven't picked, but we have choices in colors for the different hardware. And then for the light fixtures for the exterior, we're looking at maybe something like a bivolo. These are copper lanterns, and probably they'll be electrified. They make them gas or electric, but we may go electric. So this is a setup on the building when it comes to the elevation. we created a certain proportion with the different, size windows that we think are generous for the building, and they be punch openings pushed in. The porch is deep, about 9 foot deep, with kind of an inviting staircase with pedestals. We created this eyebrow around the top of the building with brackets. Some of them are doubled. It kind of goes back, about 15 feet on both sides, and kind of creates a kind of a nice corner for the building. We picked a window, again aluminum clad with some divided light, with a shadow line, actually like this window show. This is the material we'll be using for the tongue and groove material. We use cypress or pine. I had some photos of the site and the neighbors' structures, but because we already went over it, I'll kind of close my presentation at this point.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Commissioner. Ron Vilas, planner for historic preservation. Staff's finding this application is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines. We reviewed these plans that were uploaded in November 18, 2024. Coming forward, as part of our design standards, we do not dictate style. So the style that he chose is one that is period appropriate, but once again, we don't dictate that. So he comes forward with a style, and then the vocabulary on the structure needs to stay within that style, which I believe he's done. That's why we're saying it's consistent. We had some conditions on the staff report. He went through most of them. There is an accessory building that he did not touch upon, that he should put that into the presentation as well, and do a section from the ridge or from the parapet all the way down. There are some details on the structure. On the parapet, there's a cap up there. He should elaborate a little bit more on the cap, and there's some sills that are incorporated into the project that he could talk about some of the sills as well. Other than that, I believe he's talked about all the issues. If this project is to move forward with a final approval, I would put into the motion that the porte-cochere needs to be removed from all drawings moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak for or against this project? Okay, seeing no one, we will move on to the question period, and we'll start over here on my left.
I have no questions.
Hi, good evening. I was going right there to the accessory structure. Can you just walk us through a little bit? I'd like to see the relationship to the site, to the rear and to the alley and to the home. Just trying to follow the elevations of what's facing.
So the detached structure is 17 by 22.
Okay.
And it's set up 3 feet and 3 feet off the back. So 3 feet on the side, 3 feet on, that's code. And it's 22.5 feet tall.
It's a garage under?
Yes, ma'am.
And dwelling above?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you have a rendering of what the garage looks like from the alley? And will there be a fence and?
So the fence, so yeah, we have a fence, so we have, there's a gate here, it's a wooden fence, and it goes around. There's another gate to the alley, for, to access the alley, and then the fence kind of returns here and stops.
Do we know what the gates look like?
The gates are just the wooden, wooden gates, like you would see in.
Do you have a rendering of it?
No, I have a.
I don't have any other questions right now, but
Sure. Commissioner Meyer.
Would you be willing to add a garage door that is somewhat more period appropriate?
And it's a debate because I wasn't sure if we should emphasize it, like give it or let it go away. I wasn't sure which way we were going to go, but for now we're looking at something really simple. It could be color, maybe, like a wooden collar, like a brown or something. But I wasn't sure if I wanted to make it more like a carriage, looking, with cross.
As though it were opening, as though it had hinges on the sides, perhaps, something of that nature.
Okay, so you.
Because what's happened is that and that's really up to you. You need to provide something that the staff will accept if we condition the approval on that. But since the porte cochere has gone away, then it kind of makes that garage door more visible and more important.
Yeah.
And I think, and you have a water table going around
Yes, sir.
you have kind of a,
And I am showing it here, and this is the window sill. I would do them again very simply. The building is not, over ornate,
Mhm.
kind of a simpler. So we have one that goes around the entire main structure. So the water table runs along here. It kind of skips where the columns are, so the columns are a little more taller, feeling taller. But I didn't put it on this structure because this is always kind of like a lesser. Not so ornate. So we let the home have more of the details, and this one is a little bit more less, so it doesn't take over. And I can see we weren't sure. We kind of debated whether we go simpler and let it go away, or maybe do something more interesting with the door, which I can see that.
no further questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Perka?
Do you have any further information on the stairs that are being built onto the side of this, which will be visible from the street? I see them outlined there in dotted lines, but there's no detail or elevation of the stair.
This is interior. The stairs are inside.
Oh, it's interior?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
And I wish I had known. I have the plans. I just part of the
It's okay.
presentation
No,
is-
we really can't comment on plans anyway. It's really the exterior appearance that we're concerned about. What's the material, what is the front door made out of? What's the material on the front door?
The front door is it's a wooden door.
It is wood,
Yes, sir.
okay. And I know you said it's a wood fence. Do you have any more description
Well,
of a wood fence than that? Because a wood fence can mean, it can be designed in 20, 30 different ways.
yeah. I mean, there's already an existing wood fence along the north side that's existing.
Okay.
Right now, we have chain link in the back and chain link in the front. So I was thinking to just continue the wooden fence that's already existing, which is, I think, they call it stockade fence.
Right, which was built before this was a historic district.
Yes.
So it may,
So if that's appropriate, I would probably just.
it may or may not be appropriate. We're not evaluating that fence, but we're evaluating your fence. And so I'm asking, we'd like to see a design of your fence
Okay.
that would be appropriate for a historic district, and we don't have that. Just on this building and even the other building, I think you may want to, you probably need more control joints for the stucco.
We're on block, so I'm hoping, I still need some, but not, it's
Right.
block, it's a block structure.
Right, it should be more compatible with the block structure, but, are you demolishing the existing, knee wall along the front sidewalk?
So the retaining wall in the front?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's coming out, it's not appropriate, there's glass block in it. So yes, that's, entire wall's coming out.
Do we have any history on that, Ron? Do we know if that dates from any period of time or anything?
We don't have any dates on it, but I'd like to share with you the photo that we have. I don't believe it has any footers, and it's kind of giving way. that we find that common throughout the retaining walls in the district.
Okay. All right. I kind of liked it. But you're proposing, I see in this drawing over here,
Yeah,
another knee wall.
a shorter one.
Okay.
Because from what I understand, we want them to be kind of like next, the northern part of the building. I mean, the northern building has a very low, probably 12 to 16 inches wall, and I would probably stay with that.
Okay. And you'll turn that at the driveway and,
Yes, sir. It's on
and
the-
it sort of peters out like a little slice as it goes up the driveway.
So the knee wall starts here with a low return, where we engage it also here where the sidewalk is about 6 feet wide.
Okay.
Then it comes here, and then I have a little section here. Next door, there's another one here with the steps. They have one next door, so
Okay.
kind of follow that.
It doesn't turn at the driveway then, from what I can see. It just stops at the driveway.
Well, we'll have to do more work with the topography.
Okay.
And we're getting surveys done at this time, so
Okay.
once I know exactly the different topographies, we can figure out the wall.
Okay.
Again, these are schematics. We're still gonna draw construction documents.
Right. What I'd like to see, and I know you don't have, is an elevation of this house with the elevation of the bungalow next door, your next door neighbor, shown adjacent to each other. So we can see the transition from that one-story bungalow to your project here, and see how it compares in height. And you don't have anything like that? You don't have?
that relationship.
Okay. I guess I don't have any other questions.
Okay. Couple of questions. I think you're showing the AC units, but can you just point them out, make sure we're clear?
Yeah.
And then for the accessory structure?
Accessory structure, it's going to be a mini split. So the air handler is on the inside, and I'm thinking to put the compressor on the roof, which we've done.
Okay. It won't be visible?
It won't be visible.
Okay. I didn't see on your detail, maybe I missed it, what is the width of the soffit?
You mean here?
Yes.
It's 24 inches.
24, okay. And then on your elevation, well, let's look at your roof plan right here. So the water is draining on the main house, it's draining to both sides, is that correct?
Yeah, here and here.
Okay, so your elevations, you're showing downspouts on one elevation, but not on the other elevation.
Yes. Yeah, there'll be, yeah, that's a miss. I'll have to add those.
Okay.
But it's basically a collector box with the downspout, and then usually we connect them in the ground.
Sure. And then going back to the knee wall, is the knee wall going in as an architectural feature, or is it a functional response to the topography?
I'll have an architectural piece in it, because we want to put a little cap on it, precast.
No, I understand that, but you're doing it because you think it looks nice, or do you functionally need it to hold back the grade?
Again, at this point, it's hard because we still have the wall in between the existing one.
Okay.
So once we remove that one, we'll have a better idea, but I think we will need it.
Okay.
So I'm proposing that we have something. This distance may change depending on the slope and the grade. So, and that's just, again, depending on how the grade is, we will extend this to meet the grade.
Okay. And then, so we know the porte-cochere is going to be removed from this drawing. Are you going to want to add an eyebrow or something like that?
I would like to protect the door, even though it's an inset door. If I did anything, and I can add it, if maybe staff can look at it. Well, so it's going to be different. This is gone, so I'll probably create something similar to this, or even something similar to what we had on the detached structure, just a couple brackets and a shed roof.
Okay.
With clay tile, just to give it a little protection on the.
Perfect.
from the side.
Commissioner Post, you had some questions?
I did, I just wanted to come back to the accessory structure, if you could clarify, I think, is the garage door front entry?
Yes, ma'am. I mean,
Okay.
facing Delaware. You'll
Correct.
see it from Delaware.
Okay, so the rear then facing the alley is your west elevation?
Yes, I'm
Yes.
sorry, yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, the depiction of those, so the steps to access are interior.
The interior,
There's no exterior
no,
stairs.
I tried, and either, unless you
It's
go
okay.
fully poured concrete, they don't never look good and they fall apart.
That's
So
great. If you
that's
can
the-
make it work, that's great.
That's the
Um,
idea.
This is not major, I'm just curious, there's a former member of the commission that inspired me about symmetry of windows. So I'm looking at your west elevation, you've just got a dangling window sort of hanging there, and that's the alley side, right?
The other side, it's a bathroom.
Is it possible, I don't know what's going on interior, it's not ours, if there were a possibility to add a window to bring symmetry to
Oh,
that,
to the other side.
to that alley experience?
Well, I could, because once you come up here, there's a landing, and so this window would actually be facing the landing here. Yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I can add that.
Wonderful, thank you. And could you just comment then, there was a member of the public who spoke about the mass of the building relative to the others on the block. Could you comment on that? And
Well, I feel the massing of the building, because we did break it down with the front porch and there's a back porch too. So there's a lot of figure ground, and there's negative and positive spaces. The building north to us is literally a block. I mean, it's a box. So this
Okay.
one, if we go that route, I'm not sure. If, I didn't think I was supposed to kind of work with the exactly,
there's a lot of
next
va-
door.
there's a
And
lot
this
of
is a two-story
variables.
building. The other one is a single story. They may do, additions to it. So
Okay, I appreciate it, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, not seeing it. You have 5 minutes for a rebuttal if you so choose.
I mean, we worked hard to get this project going. The reason we actually bought this lot is my son here lost his house on Davis Island and to flood, and so we are trying to get him on higher ground, which this is. So we're just trying to make it work for him. Again, the issue with the porte cochere, we can live with it, and it's fine, as long as it makes everyone the pleasure of the board. We're good. I think we just want to keep moving forward.
Perfect. All right, well, thank you for your presentation. At this point, we're going to close the public hearing and move on to discussions. Did you want the floor?
I have no further comments. If someone has all of the, if someone would like to make a motion, I think.
Well, I mean, I think there is some discussion to be had about the mass and volume. I think there's some discussion to had about there's no detail or information on the fence. I'm a little concerned, he mentioned that the downspouts will be connected underground and taken somewhere with a French drain or something else like that, but, in particular, the garage downspout might just dump into the alley. I don't know if that's not tied in. I'm concerned about downspouts, and I was gonna mention, if we had actually accepted the porte cochere, that its overhang was 6 inches away from the property line, which means that water was probably gonna fall on the adjacent property in a heavy downpour, and that was gonna be an issue. But I'm concerned about, anybody dumping water onto somebody else's property. So that's a concern that might be part of our comment, in our approval or disapproval. But most of my other concerns aren't, I am concerned about building big rectangular boxes in a historic district and then decorating it with little eyebrows. But it's still a big, giant shoebox in a historic district, which, while appropriate for a multifamily, understood that's, how those multifamily buildings were built, and they're scattered throughout Hyde Park. And there's 2 apartments on the ground floor, 2 apartments on the second floor. They're long, linear apartments. But is that an appropriate aesthetic for a single family, or volume for a single family? And it's something that we fight all the time, is that what's buildable on a site by zoning and setback and height limitations does not necessarily make a sensitive house or volume in a historic district, even though it's quote-unquote allowed by zoning. Part of the reason I wanted to get on this board is because we do have some, and this is not pertaining to this house in particular, but some McMansions have been built in Hyde Park and places, that because they had the legal authority to go to setback and full height, and you end up with a giant box in a historic district. It's just, I think there's some conversation to be had about that. I didn't want to jump into a motion right away on it. And I've seen some nodding heads.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with your comments. I like the project. Again, I respect wanting to activate the space and activate it as a residence, although I'm not offended at all by multi there either, but I appreciate what they're trying to do fully, and would love to support it. My concern in supporting it tonight is that there does seem to be a lot of detail missing that we would typically expect to see, largely around things that have a fair amount of public visibility. And this is, if I understand right, I think it's the first new construction in the new section of the historic district, the new added section. And so perhaps particular care is given to, making sure that we use our due diligence appropriately. So I think things like the look and feel of the fence, the garage, the gates, I agree the French drain or whatever the stormwater mitigation plan is enormous. In reference to this being higher ground, we want it to continue to be higher ground and not compromise that. So I think that's a growing concern in the district. So I think there's a fair amount of things that actually would be better served to come back to this group. No disrespect to the staff, they are completely capable of being the appropriate decision maker on most of these things, but just given new construction, very little detail that we've seen on some of these more public facing and public impacting types of aspects, I would prefer to bring this back, or if that were an appropriate path, to be able to see more detail.
I'm in favor of it. I think given the next door is we're not really here to discuss the design of it. From what I understand from staff, that they've chosen a Mediterranean. They're within their right to choose the Mediterranean. I think it's great that they've made it, I think, overall historically appropriate, particularly given across the street that has a wide concrete. This one is looks like it's, gonna have the driveway like we ask of other properties. It has the other structure that's gonna, if we approve it, put the bar, whatever the doors are gonna be, the garage doors. So I think it's great and would move to approve. I'd be in favor of approving it with, the concerns that have been raised by others, the garage doors, the window on the back of the accessory structure. I'm not quite sure if the drainage is really our purview or
Or
would go to the,
permitting.
or to, I'm sorry?
Or permitting, yeah,
Yeah, I
permitting
Permitting.
issue.
Yeah.
I would tell you
More than anything else
that,
like
that is a site planning permitting
Grading and
issue.
permitting,
That-
yeah.
That is not ours, and it will be handled through that. I am in favor of moving forward with this. I think while there are some detail issues that need to be worked out, the garage door, I feel very comfortable with staff. The wooden fence, I feel very comfortable staff can take care of that. The eyebrow feature would be the most complex issue that needs to be worked out. But I think the detailing on the house is well done, and again, I feel comfortable that will be handled appropriately. So I personally don't have any issue with it, and great points on the massing and the volume, but again, I think it's a simple, but it'll be an attractive home, and I think it fits. It may not be exactly everything you want, but I think it fits, it meets the guidelines, and I feel comfortable moving forward.
I also feel comfortable moving forward. I think there's sufficient detail shown in the drawings that we can accept it, having staff approve the items that we have mentioned. And it is refreshingly simple for some of the new construction that when compared to some of the new construction that we do see in the district, that sometimes can tend to be overwrought. So.
Would you like to make a motion?
I was hoping you would.
I can do that.
Thank you.
I moved to, and by the way, I just wanted to make sure that we had at least a discussion about things, and that was all brought as part of the record. I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC 25-0000050 for the property at 407 South Delaware, with the following conditions: that the applicant add a window to the accessory structure on the alley side to create some symmetry, that the garage door be more sensitively designed for historic appropriateness, and that staff and applicant coordinate carefully on the new design for an eyebrow over the side door where the porte cochere has now been removed, because based upon finding of fact that
You want to finalize fencing with staff and then remove the portico from the drawings.
Thank you. The documents submitted have to have the porte cochere removed, and that the fencing and the gate design be more carefully designed and not just copy the existing fence that's there on the adjacent property. Because, based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons: that it meets Chapter 27 of the Tampa City ordinances and meets the design guidelines and the Secretary of the Interior standards.
Okay, thank you. Do we see it here a second?
I'll second them.
No, go ahead.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, so all in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, no one against it. This motion passes. Congratulations. Look
Thank you.
forward to the project.
Thank you.
Oh, that's right. Sir, I misspoke. I did not ask you if you were, if you understood and you agreed with the conditions that were in that motion? Okay, and they're acceptable. Great. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Moving to our next agenda item, which is ARC-25-0000054. This is for the address of 800 South Village Circle. This is for Block F. This is in the Hyde Park Historic District. The structure that we're going to discuss this evening was constructed in 2000. It is a non-contributing structure. The underlying zoning is PD. They're moving forward within their rights. The request is for a certificate of appropriateness for a facade renovation. Looking at the 1929 Sanborn map, I draw a circle around the subject area. You see here the density of the residential fabric that was there. Property in question is highlighted in the green. You see the grid that's in place in 1929, and you see how the grid had been altered in this area for this commercial area. I just spoke briefly to somebody earlier, and I said that today, if somebody wanted to take away that much historic fabric and do something like this, it would not be supported. So they turned that a negative by altering the grid into a positive. I believe that Hyde Park Village is a jewel, and everybody kind of goes there, and it strengthens the residential community. This is looking from above. Currently, just to walk you around the elevations, it's a tight site, but this is internal where Sweet Greens is at. That's looking at that facade and how it currently is. This is looking at the main facade, if you will, that faces the fountain. You see some of the articulation there, the window patterns, the coping on the parapet. Kind of zooming in a little bit, you see some of the awnings that are there with the tiebacks, some of the canvas awnings, the hard awnings. You see the lower storefronts, some of the signage that's incorporated into the existing condition. Here you see another storefront with a different kind of shade element. You see some vertical signage here. All of the signage is incorporated into the private property, so those blade signs do not encroach over the property line. This is focusing more on the pedestrian level. You see the lower bulkhead here. You see some of the openings, the bays into the shops. Once again, some signage, the reveal of the windows. This is on that elevation that is facing the circle. This is that side elevation, once again showing kind of a plinth to a column. Some articulation on that facade that was very blank. Looking at that same facade at second level, you see some canvas awnings. You see the coping at the parapet level. As you continue down the block, this is the rear. There's very little separation from the residential component. And that is the residential component that is also non-contributing. That concludes the photo presentation, and I'll have the agent address the board.
Thank you.
Okay, and then mouse down here. Beautiful. All right, good evening. My name is Amanda Chisholm. I'm a development director with WS Development, and tonight I'm joined also by Sergio DeSanto and Paul Palmer from REP, our architectural team, as well as Sarah Williams, the general manager of Hyde Park Village. So tonight, and leading up to this meeting, Sarah and I have done some outreach to neighbors. Obviously, you've seen, we are very integrated in with residential. We also have residential above some of our properties. So we've spoken with the Historic Hyde Park Neighborhood Association representatives, as well as Hyde Park Preservation, Inc. We always try to be a good neighbor. We want people to be aware of what we're doing and what we're proposing. So walked through these elevations just so that they are aware and did have a chance to ask questions. The goal, being just to keep everybody in the loop. Tonight, I will plan to run through the overview of the design and materiality, and then Sergio is here also to jump in on materials. We have some physical samples that we can put here or pass around, as well as some photographs. So, as Ron mentioned, we are here applying for a certificate of appropriateness for a facade renovation project. I'm gonna click here. This is going to stay within the existing building footprint. You'll see through the elevations that the massing will remain largely the same as well. The black F1 building is located here, roughly within this red line. You saw some of the aerials that Ron had presented. very close to Village Circle, which is an important focal point on our property. So obviously a building that, as with all the others, we really value and we see a really great opportunity here. Our goal is really to strengthen the building's architectural connection to the neighborhood and the historic nature of both the village and the district. So the facade will be altered to introduce more historic and authentic materials, as well as some intricate details that play off of the surrounding buildings. I have a couple other site maps here just to give you a little more context that were included in the application, showing you the property line as well, cutting through Village Circle, and then Block F, which is the residential building nearby. I will also note that the project is focused just on the building right now. We will be maintaining the existing landscaping. We don't anticipate any site work will be needed for the project. Obviously a dynamic property, so at some point in the future there may be changes there, but that's not included in this application. I'm sure many on the board are familiar with the project and with the property, but just to set the surrounding context a bit, the property spans 6 city blocks in the historic Hyde Park district. It's been managed by our company since 2013. Obviously at this scale, we do play a role in the district, and over the years we've strived to continue to achieve really a blend of retail, dining, amenities within this overall lifestyle center. And the goal for us is for the village to be both a destination as well as a community hub that features architectural beauty and nods to the historic character of the district, and also has beautiful landscaping and retail and culinary offerings. So we've been pleased to be able to work with the community throughout the time that we've owned the property, as we have done renovations to many of the buildings, you know, always with that same goal in mind, trying to use these historic materials, making sure it's consistent with the district, while also bringing in new tenants for the community. So a little more on the material precedent that really guided the design that you'll see tonight and that was submitted through the application. These are some properties within the village as well as within the district. And we've really chosen to focus on brick, limestone, stucco as some of the key materials here. You'll see Venetian plasters incorporated as well. But just a couple examples of what exists today. So near the snow circle entrance here on the upper left, you can see the transition between the stucco building to the left and then the brick being incorporated in the structure to the right. We are looking to use a dark window treatment similar to what is at H Block, which is this middle upper photo here. And also you can see again sort of that transition in materiality. There's brick present at the facade, and then it transitions to concrete. We have an example here outside of the property. Obviously brick is a very historic and authentic material that's frequently used, and it's offered in many different treatments across the property in the district. At Lululemon, you can see it's painted white. Our most recent project, the Pally House renovation, which is a new hotel at the property, we're just showing this second story window treatment with the canvas awnings, which are also included in the new design. And then directly across from the building at Bartaco, which is our Block E1 building, you can see a really nice transition between these materials with the limestone and the brick both present there. And then just a little on some of the details that we're working through. So one of them is we are trying to design a really ornate sort of custom wrought iron rail, which will be incorporated into the windows on the east facade. This exists today. You know, I mentioned we have upper story residential at F Block as well as above some of the other retail. So there are already second story railings. It's not quite the aesthetic that we're going for with that white paint. We want something that's a little more ornate, old world, and has more of a historic element to it. So these are just a couple precedent images of what we're trying to achieve. Obviously not on property, but just showing you what our goal is. The other piece that we're working through is window planters, which will be present at many of the second story windows. Ron showed this at the Kittenish facade, which is on the east side facing Sweet Green. We already have these trellises with plantings that crawl up the building. It's a really important part of the identity of the building. It gives us some variability, it offers some distinction, and we're reimagining that with the planters. So we'll actually have live plants in these planters at the buildings. I feel like it's an important part of the identity and want to preserve that. I I know that Ron also showed some of the existing conditions photos, so I won't spend a ton of time here. The building itself is majority stucco. It has a concrete base. We're proposing to replace with a granite base, limestone base in various portions of the building. There is some brick present at the tower. That's actually brick that's painted blue. So there are some materials there, as well as those metal canopy features and some awnings as well. This is a reference for the existing floor plan of the existing building. I mentioned this is a facade renovation project, so we are working along each of the 3 main facades and replacing the materials, demoing out, and putting a new exterior wall. We are not planning to increase the size of the building footprint. The only thing I will point out is these recessed windows that exist here. We will infill those. So the goal would be to make these straight across so that it's flush and you can get storefronts there as well. So you'll see in the new building footprint that those are infilled. So I want to just make sure that you guys see that nuance. And then I'll just mention, this is a demising plan that we've drawn. We do not have leased tenants at this point, so it could change. But we've drawn it in order to advance the project. The interior demising walls may change as we lease out to different tenants. And then moving into elevations. So before and after, just to give you a sense of the overall massing here, you can see it's very similar. There's similar steps. The roof lines will be similar as well. I'll point out on the right side, we are planning to remove and take down this parapet so that the roof is actually level, which will allow for some more cap detailing. On the tower feature, we're also planning to remove this cap. It's a little bit out of place right now in terms of the design that we're going for, which is something that's a little more simple and elegant. So we'll be removing that and then adding a nice detail at the tower, along with applying the Venetian plaster. You can see the windows are in generally the same zones. Obviously, the facade hierarchy has been reimagined here. We have some smaller, elongated, narrow windows, and the scale is reduced as you work your way towards that east side, which is left on the page, and get closer to the residential areas. In the center here, we have the larger openings, which is great for retail, good for connection, being able to see into spaces for customers and patrons as well. And then the window planters, which are suggested here on the right side of the page, as well as the ornate rails that I mentioned on the east elevation over here. Zooming in a little, this is the northwest corner. It's present on this elevation as well, just for orientation. If you know the property, it's where Pottery Barn Kids entryway is today. Just to give you a sense of a zoom in on the rearranging of that facade hierarchy. So the more narrow windows, the window planters, the canvas awnings, and really going for a clean, simple entryway for these tenants. On the east side, again, the side with the planter trellises that faces towards Sweetgreen, you see that the scale of the windows is reduced, so they're slightly smaller here, really in response to the surrounding property, what it's facing. We are preserving that sloped roof feature here. We're proposing to also add a muntin to the windows, so those will be applied externally and internally, just for a distinguishing detail here and to add some additional charm. The south elevation, this is the elevation Ron put up there that's directly faces Hyde Park Walk. So there's a sidewalk there, there's a little bit of landscaping. It's really not a public-facing elevation, so we're not proposing to do a whole lot here. As you can see, the windows remain where they are, the entryways remain where they are. We will bring the cap along the roof for consistency. We will also wrap the brick that will be on the west elevation for a better application, but just showing this so that you have a sense that we're really not touching this facade in any large way. And then the west elevation that faces towards South Dakota Avenue or toward Meat Market, if you're familiar with the property, we'll be wrapping brick on this side, continuing that cadence of windows. The long, narrow windows is with the canvas awnings and the planters. I will note that in our original application, we were proposing a garage door here. We've removed that. We've worked through, it actually makes more sense to have it be part of the tenant space. So we're continuing this along. So if anybody saw that and had that question, I just wanted to mention that. Window sections, we have two included here. The first section's cut on the north side where I was showing you those recessed windows are being infilled. So you can see the slab infill at the second floor and the first floor as well. The awning that existed, that recessed window, will be removed and will be replaced with thermally broken commercial storefront. The second window section is cut on the northwest side, so that's where the Pottery Barn kids entryway is. Again, just showing you what exists today with the metal canopy that will be removed. We'll be replacing that with those longer, narrow windows as well as the canvas awnings, and then the commercial storefront as well as the two elongated windows at the first floor. Okay, so now getting a little more into the materials with the rendered elevations. The materials, as I mentioned, that we're primarily using are limestone brick, stucco, and Venetian plaster. The design intent, as you can see with the materials applied, is really to define clear zones of these materials for future retail storefronts, and also to create some familiar expression here and ensure consistency. So on the west side, we'll be using a warm gray brick. I don't know if we want to just go ahead and pull some of these up and we can do a little roadshow while we're talking through them. We chose that, again, as a historic material. We're choosing a Norman size brick. You may be able to put it here. Ron's got it, okay.
Ron, could you lift it up?
Yeah, it's very heavy. Luckily, we were able to ship.
Little hand action.
So it's a Norman size, which is a little longer than a typical size. The color's integral to the brick, so it's not painted. It's actually a light gray, which is integral. And it has a touch of earth tone to it. The idea was to achieve a finer articulation for the facade here, and then also to provide some contrast to this center feature with the tower, where we're applying Venetian plaster. So that will be much smoother, a nice contrast. It will have this step detailing there as well. Moving over to the central portion of the north facade here, we'll be using stucco. Again, these larger openings for that visual connection to pedestrians and shoppers that are walking by. And then moving to the east side, we'll have stucco at the higher visual zone, and we'll be using limestone at the base. Across the entire building, we'll have a granite base until we reach this eastern portion. We'll transition to a limestone base. So we have a couple samples of granite and limestone that we can pass around as well.
They're floating around.
Beautiful, beautiful.
We've got the limestone, here's another limestone, one more. And then, as Amanda said, these are true to form, these are earth materials. Absolutely zero synthetic materials being applied here.
Moving through the rest of the rendered elevations, this is the east side. So again, those two visual zones. At the pedestrian level, we have the limestone. The second level, we're applying stucco. You can see the muntin pattern across the windows and that sloped roof, which will be a zinc color, and new, but it will be the same feature that was there previously. And then on the west side, we will be wrapping it in the same brick that you saw in that north elevation, and again, continuing that cadence of windows. The south side is so boring because we're not really doing anything here, but again, just to show you, it will remain, we'll patch and repair, and then just to show you the wrap of the brick as well, and the cap present at the roof. And then I'll end with renderings, just because I think seeing it in context makes a big difference. This is the northeast facade that we're looking towards. So if you were standing, right outside Sweetgreen, you could see this view of the building. Ron had a similar perspective in some of his photos of the existing. So you can see that limestone pattern, adding that texture and authenticity at the pedestrian level. The windows above, the muntin application. And then going across here with the stucco, Venetian plaster at the tower, and then finally the brick on the far northern side. This is the opposite view, so seeing the northwest corner with the brick applications with that light gray, again moving into the Venetian plaster. This was one of the elevations I showed with sort of that cleaner entryway and the narrow elongated windows. And then turning around the building, obviously Hyde Park Walk is here, so it's not represented in this, but just to give you the full picture of the south facade and the rendering. This is the west side of the building facing Meat Market. And then just a couple more views here, one that's a little more zoomed in to give you an idea of the main facade that faces Village Circle and what that scale will look like. Do we want to show the lighting and the?
Sure. Lighting hut sheets?
Yeah. So we'll show a couple more precedents and samples, just to make sure we hit on all those conditions as well.
Just roll it. Roll this down.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, so we have a couple of different lighting sconces that we're considering, so we wanted to show you some of these. The idea behind the lighting design is really to highlight these materials that we've been so careful to curate and to pick out, rather than highlighting specific tenant facades. So we have sconces placed at many of the tenant entryways, and Sergio's showing you a couple of what they look like. They're a vintage aesthetic, a dark color to match the storefront color that we've picked out as well. And then we'll also combine these with some uplighting that will go around the building. The idea is for it to be soft, subtle, again, shining on the materials and highlighting that as part of the architecture. And we've just chosen different fixtures based on the fact that there's planters on one side, so we can't get these in-ground fixtures, so we're using a floodlight instead. And then the in-ground fixtures, one is a little more subtle, again, on that east side that faces towards the residential building. Mm-hmm.
And then here's a
Beautiful. And then we can show some hardware too, if you want. So these are just a couple examples of hardware that we like. We feel like it's elegant, it fits the design, long entrance door hardware, a couple different examples of how that can be presented. We've used this in a couple of other projects. It's come out really nice and elegant and reads well with the design that we're looking for. Yeah, that's just a precedent image, so that's fine. Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same, I think we've covered it. Right?
Yep.
She's got that. Okay, then. This is similar to what you have all with you, which is a summary, a little bit more photographs of the samples that we passed around. Now the planter, the objective there, again, it's annuals that will be planted, have a reservoir for water. There are many manufacturers out there that will produce composites or PVC or lightweight concrete, kind of, reinforced with fiberglass. The objective is not to introduce that planter into the building facade, to keep the performance and the warranties of that facade intact, while the planter is, could be subject to error or the fact that there's soil and water is being introduced there. So, let's see here. The awnings as well will be true canvas awnings. And as Amanda spoke about earlier, the white KK, dark bronze, and different lights.
I think that one's going around too, so you can see what the storefront looks like.
We've got the Venetian plaster, which is, again, a limestone application. So you basically are creating stone on the wall. It'll have a slight sheen to it, as you see in that sample. And then we have the limestone, again, true quarried materials, honed as well, and the stucco being a smooth finish. The granite base, they are typically, a granite base is scheduled to be about 12 inches high, about 2 inches thick at the base, applied in a bed of border. And then the limestone and the brick, we're not calling it essentially brick veneer, it's thin brick, it's true brick. It's been, kiln fired and just simply cut. So it's true brick, and it actually has dimension. It turns at 3 5/8 inward, so the windows are set in. So it will not look like, a two-dimensional facade. It'll turn the corner at the windows and have depth. And that's why we're also turning it at the corner at that part of the elevation as well, as you saw. Turning the corner, it will not be seen as a two-dimensional object laying on the facade. But it is a unique system of what we call a TAP 2 system. So it will have weeps, and it's a cavity wall, and water will drain appropriately at the base.
And then do we have anything else here?
The
I think
roof.
just the
Yeah,
roof,
sorry.
to give you guys the sense of the color. So the zinc, which is a grayish color, just so that you know what we're talking about.
Right.
Okay,
Let's see.
I think we did it with all the people.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. Sure. I can hear.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. There was one letter of opposition that was entered into the record. It's in your packet. Just wanted to bring that to your attention. Staff worked with the applicants tirelessly to get to this point. Staff finds that this is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines, the final plans that were submitted on December 17th, 2024. We had some bullet items of conditions that were addressed this evening. You saw a complete presentation today. Just to keep you focused, this is a non-contributing structure that was built in 2000. The language that they incorporated into tonight's presentation, they showed materials within the district. That shows the context within the district and within Hyde Park Village. On page 3 of your staff report, design criteria for new construction, the scale, the width, and the height, the massing, the setbacks, the orientation, and the alignment have all been solidified. They didn't move that, just a little bit of the storefront, but all that is constant. Moving forward, you're going to discuss tonight the materials, the facade and window proportions, the entrance and porch projections, and roof forms, I think are on the table for discussion tonight. I'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Is there anyone in the public that's here to speak for or against the project? Okay, seeing no one, we will go to questions and start with Commissioner Prokop, please.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for the presentation. I really only have one kind of unknown, and you brought up an uplighting fixture towards the end of your presentation, but no idea where it is or where they're located. If that can be highlighted maybe on an elevation or something where they might be going? Okay, here we go. This is exactly what I asked for.
Sorry, we
That's
did
okay.
miss one piece of paper after.
That's all right.
So basically, the planters are here that exist, so we're using that facade floodlight. And then we're using this square uplighting, which would be in-ground at these blue dots, so you can see it here.
Okay.
Again, we want something soft, not too bright, that will just add a little bit of illumination to the texture and material. And then over here, we're using a round fixture, which is a little more subtle than what the square fixture projects. Again, we have the limestone, but only at that first floor. So really trying to focus on the detail of the limestone and acknowledging that that's the side of the building, which is closer to residential as well.
Okay. Yeah, this is basically answering all the
Okay.
the questions
Good.
that I had. I don't have any other questions.
Okay.
Commissioner Myers?
A very thorough presentation. Thank you. I have no questions.
Great. Thank you.
Commissioner Bruce?
Thank you for the presentation, very thorough, appreciate it as well. Just a question about your, a little out of the purview, but just in the interest of the surrounding area, how do you plan to stage for all this activity?
Yeah, so we're working with the GCs right now to figure out the best logistics plan. It's a tight site, we know that. We always want to be a good neighbor. That's part of why we've been communicating so far. And Sarah and I, who's the GM, have had these conversations to figure out like how we can have a communication plan. We're likely going to have to phase one elevation at a time or a couple elevations. Staging wise, it may impact the front of the building. There may be vehicular impacts, et cetera, but we just don't have a great definitive answer at this point. We are committed to, as soon as we have a logistics plan, making sure that that's communicated to all the residents though.
Okay, just want to be mindful of the letter of objection from the
Yes, of course, yep.
Neighborhood
And
Watch and-
Sarah reached out to him as well, just to make sure. And she sat down with them. We'll continue to hear those and make sure we work through them.
Right, thank you.
I just have a couple questions. One,
Sure.
you have seen the letter that
Yes.
came from,
Mhm,
okay.
I did.
And I think a lot of what's in the letter, a lot of what's in the letter is not really within our purview of what we can address. Is that correct?
That's an accurate statement, and when we received the letter, it's public information, we forwarded it to their group, and immediately they reached out to the scrivener that generated that letter, so they're in discussion now.
Okay, so even though it's not really, we can't really speak to or make a condition based on, you know, what's in the letter and the complaints in the letter, you know, it is of concern that at least a representative of this group has expressed issues with the operation and how it's affecting their, you know, their residents.
Yep.
How about loading bays, or how is product gonna be brought in to that building? Because I thought I saw on the meat market side that there was a loading, I'm not sure it's ever used.
Yes, so there is a loading dock that's across at H Block. So if you walk by Meat Market and you continue, you'll see that there are some loading bays there.
Okay.
And that is where all the vendors are directed to go. And I know that Sarah and the property have worked really hard to try to make sure that's enforced. They have security, they have police come out on a regular basis, and we'll continue to do that. We take that really seriously. We want to be a
Okay.
good neighbor. So I just want you to know that we heard the letter and we'll make sure that we continue to stay in contact with them.
And then how does this design speak to what I consider the older portion? I think it's the H, which has the kind of arches across from Meat Market.
Across
know,
from, to Block E1, like where
Block E, yeah, that
Lululemon is.
has more of the arches. It seems like the newer additions are not carrying that feature in. Just, could you speak to that and why that's not being brought into any of the other designs?
Sure. Well, I think and Sergio, you can weigh in here too. I think what we're trying to do with talking to that building is materiality. So the limestone, the brick, there's a really nice dialogue between that building and this building because of the materials that we've chosen. For this building, we are trying to do something a little simpler and a little more elegant. So you did see we're taking that parapet down
Right.
and cleaning it up. It allows for a little more detailing, which we think will present really well here and be a nice complement rather than being completely repetitive, talking to something that exists, but also giving it a little bit of a distinction.
Has that other building been renovated?
Most of the buildings have gone through some renovation, whether it be interior or exterior, but obviously very carefully to preserve that historic preservation and integrity.
Okay, and then one other, which is more of a comment, and it's
Okay.
not really within our purview, but I just noticed that the interior floor plans, the before and after, that, and this, it may not be the final, so
Yeah.
excuse me, that the restrooms are removed, and there's only one restroom in the back, and I'm just thinking about eventually the workers in these, you know, and that
Yeah.
are gonna be manning these stores.
Yeah.
So you don't need to, because it's not really within our, but I just noticed that.
I'm happy to respond.
that
So,
the bathrooms
yeah,
have been removed.
So it will be a shell delivery, so we'll be delivering a building shell. And then the tenants will come in under their own permits and actually do the fit-out work, so at that
Okay.
point, they would definitely be incorporating
Putting in a
required
restroom.
plumbing, restrooms, et
They'll
cetera.
all be code compliant
Yep.
for FPC
Okay,
plumbing.
Yep,
we just want to make sure that
yeah, no
the
worries, I understand.
people who are going to be actually working in the buildings are
Yeah.
cared for.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of questions.
Okay.
Very thorough, but just for my own clarity. And you can keep this on here. You showed a roof material, and the only roof that I think we're gonna see is at this northeast corner.
Yeah.
So you're gonna replace that roof with a new material?
Yeah.
New.
Okay.
Yep,
Standing seam.
You also mentioned the railing, the decorative railing, and you referenced the white railing on the residential that's part of this F block.
yeah.
But that is not part, the replacement of those is not part of this.
It's not, no, just to simply show that the detail of an upper story railing exists on property.
Got it. And then last question goes back to this letter of opposition. The vast
Yep.
majority of this letter is operational in nature, which is not our purview. But it did mention standing water and sidewalks and that. You said that you don't anticipate site changes as part of this. But is that, are
We
there
don't
any plans to
anticipate.
deal with that with
Yeah,
standing
we don't
water?
anticipate site changes as part of this project. If there's an operational issue where a sidewalk needs to be replaced or a road needs to be repaved or whatever it is, then we can definitely do that. But it would be through a separate process through our operations team.
And then would you put your last rendering up?
Yeah.
It showed the front of, I guess it's the north side.
Can I switch to, is it PC?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
the last one? Okay. Beautiful.
So does the pavement come that close to the building now?
The pavement?
The pavement?
Yeah.
It does?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I think there may be, I don't know if it's exact, there is like a cutout here. Yep, it looks like it's there. So there's 3 parking spaces, they're pavers, and then the sidewalk.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I would have lost money on a bet with that.
There is a construction joint that you probably can't tell is there, maybe like, I don't know, 7-8 inches out, and then the sidewalk.
Okay.
I think that perspective is a little distorted.
Yeah,
And-
it's
and-
probably the view.
And
It's
it
throwing
shows,
off.
you know, it shows the parking spaces as wide as a highway
Yeah.
lane.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I know, parallax. I tell
Yeah,
my staff that
exactly.
like hammer.
Exactly.
Any other questions?
I had one other question for Ron, for staff. And it's related but totally unrelated. Has it ever been contemplated to remove Hyde Park Village from the district?
It's not included in the national district. If
I
you look for the-
understand.
So they made that distinction, but there is no language, no discussion removing Hyde Park Village from the district.
From the local district itself? Because there's no relationship, frankly.
I think when it first came about, they were trying to energize the district, and this is the direction they went. They went through some pains early on, and we were part of that. I think it found a home now, and it's moving forward. It's a destination point. I hear nothing but positive things from
No.
the visitors, the neighborhood, and
I do too. I do too. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen it more populated
Vibrant,
than it
yeah.
is today.
Correct.
You know, and I've been here for 22 years now. But that's not related to it being within the historic district.
I think it is what it is now, and it's not gonna go in a different direction. It's gonna
Okay.
stay where it's
I'm just
at.
curious, because it would just, I understand that there's a process to go through and have things like this come in front of us. But this doesn't relate to the historic district.
Well, this is new
very much at
construction
all.
within, and this, as I
Yeah.
stated earlier, it's a very important component of the success of Hyde Park in general, and the village here is that nucleus at times.
I get it, and you just want somebody to look at it at least, right? You gotta have somebody overseeing
Well, for this,
the
we
developers.
we contemplated doing this administratively, but then it grew into a larger project, and taking the public
Yeah.
forum out of this was not where we wanted to be. Our phones
Yeah.
would have blown up, so we put it here. They did their mail outs, they did their sign posting, so
Right.
everybody was notified of what
Right.
was going on here. You saw you had one letter and nobody in attendance.
Okay,
So that leads me to believe that, then we're very transparent. Everybody could go into a cell and see what the request is. So by it being silenced, I think that that's saying that the neighborhood and everybody else noticed is supporting the project.
yeah, I mean, it's a nice aesthetic update, let's put it that way, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Seeing no more questions, you have up to 5 minutes if you so choose for rebuttal.
I don't know if we have anything else to add. Hopefully, we've given you enough information to make a decision, and we're really happy with the project and excited to see it move forward. And as I mentioned, we'll make sure that we're communicating with all the neighbors and everybody's in the loop so that we can hope that it goes as smoothly as possible.
Okay,
Thank you
great.
so much.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, we're going to close the public hearing portion and move on to discussion.
As I said, you know, it's nice that we get the opportunity to review this because it's within the historic district, but it's not a historic review, you know, per se. I think what they're doing is bringing it up to, you know, some modern retail aesthetic standards, and, you know, it's what happens, you know. I know they did some of the buildings on Swan that I thought made a nice improvement to the aesthetics, particularly the corner where On Swan is and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the materiality and the
Well, I would tell you in today's world of synthetics, I think the material choices, the true materials, the permanence of it is well done.
And the fact that they made an emphasis on that.
Yeah,
You know,
and
that,
they're making a
that they're all
sizable
natural
investment on
materials
it.
and they're not
Absolutely.
synthetic and, you know, there's no drive it and there's no,
Yeah,
you know.
right, exactly.
It's very nice quality materials. I mean, I'm particularly interested in seeing how the Venetian plaster turns out on the exterior. I've had very little experience seeing it on exteriors, more interiors, and more in a polished nature, but this is a different product, so I'm interested in seeing how that turns out.
Yeah, and I do think, one of the other positives of this is it might be the beginning of a furtherance on some of the structures that are there that are very dated and
Kind of-
don't really convey the feel, so.
Yeah, it seems to me that they're kind of moving in some sort of a organized, timed phase update as tenants are updated or, you know, that kind of thing. I think this is probably almost tenant-driven because I know that box that volume is receiving all new tenants. So, no, as an architect, I think, you know, it's pretty tasteful.
Yeah, I think it's very nice. You know, I do have a little bit of a concern that, to your point, we're marching more from outward in, and eventually that block that has more of the arches, we're gonna see it come this flat, but, you know, that's not on for today. So we'll wait to see if that happens. But to your point, this is not, you know, it's not really historic, but to this area, in that those arches are historic to that development. So we'll just see kind of what happens to that building as they keep going. But I think it's very nice.
I take it you like the arches.
So the whole thing, right, I mean, historically, this project wasn't there. It was, you know, it was initially designed how it was designed. But the arches do kind of speak to the rest of, I think, to the rest of Hyde Park, and it has some softness that you find in the rest of the residential area that this more modern retail doesn't necessarily coincide, I don't think, with the residential. But, you know, so that's why I pointed out the arches,
Yeah.
is that it does soften it to the rest of the Hyde Park area. But this goes along with the rest of the updating that has been done in the Hyde Park retail space.
Personally, I hope they add a few more, they eliminated the Basque murals from the garage door on one of the portions there, and I like it, and I'm a fan of the arts, so if, that, you know, there be some more
Stay focused.
local art. It's a commentary. It's a commentary. You know, I think it's important in commercial development that art be incorporated into commercial development more often. So we're commenting amongst ourselves here, and somebody's probably listening. I don't know if they're listening or not, but
So, does anyone want to propose a motion?
I'm going to ask for guidance here. This is actually a certificate of appropriateness that is being asked for? Okay. Where'd it go? Move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC /25-000054 for the property located at 800 South Village Circle. Because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons. That it references the existing materiality of the district, as well as following the Secretary of the Interior's design standards.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a second. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, motion passes. Congratulations. Look forward to the project.
Yep.
All right, then I'm looking for a motion to receive and file submitted documents and exhibits.
So moved.
For a second.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.